that, my name is Nola Wanta. I am the Senior Director of Business Development and Strategy. I work on a number of initiatives. I've been in higher education for the last 20 some odd years with a lot of work in business school. So it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to have all of you. So I will go ahead and have Tanya go next.
Hi, my name is Tanya Parrish. This is my third year judging the competition, and I have a background that includes work in government and private sector, trade associations in the land and energy space. So I was excited to see this presentation.
David Parrish. I'm an energy and minerals public policy consultant based here in Alaska. This is my second year judging in the competition, and really appreciate the chance to participate. And
my name is Henry Tart. I'm a lawyer at the Tart Law Firm. I went to business school at Loyola a long time ago. I've been a judge about 3 or 4 times, but this is the first time in probably 10 years. So I'm actually 150 years old.
Glad you're still with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Henry. So with that, I'm just gonna, share some opening comments. Henry, if you can please mute your stuff, that would be fantastic. So in this part of the competition, before you all start, just a reminder for everyone, we're all taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. So you'll need to let us know who we are and what we're representing so that we can, coordinate with you accordingly. So again, please let everyone know who you are, but also let us know who we are before you all begin. The team will have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. So all of us judges will be muted, we'll be listening. When you are finished, the judges will ask you questions for 10 to 15 minutes. During the Q&A, both the team, you guys, and us judges stay in character. After the Q&A, we, the judges, will give you feedback outside of our role play. So with that, please let us know who we are first, what we represent, so that we can ask you questions accordingly, and then you are welcome to start, introduce yourselves, and so forth. So thank you.
Good afternoon to the IBESCC Development Board of Directors. Our names are Jana, Shihan, and Tien, and we are Descant Consulting. Canada is so rich in natural resources, and mining companies play a vital role in the health of the economy, and that includes IBESCC development. Today, we're going to discuss changing in the industry around Indigenous consent and partnership. IBESCC, you have built your business on opening past-producing gold mines to generate wealth while minimizing your impact to the environment. Your goal is to become an intermediate gold producer, and you face financial obligations from the Caribou Gold Project. However, in fast-tracking the process to start construction, you proceeded without consent from Hatsul First Nation. We will analyze 3 dimensions of this problem and propose a solution to you to commit to Indigenous relationships. And through relationship repair with Hatsuth and an ethical culture shift, you will see fewer delays and risks, investor trust, and public support, leading to an NPV of over $500 million.
So gold prices have reached a record high, surpassing $3,000 per ounce. With rising investment demand from central bank and ETF in 2024, this is a pivotal moment for gold companies to accelerate development, and competition is intensifying with exploration budgets up to 42% year over year. Mining faces a scrutiny for environmental and social impact like deforestation, water pollution, and human rights issues. By 2026, over half of the world's critical mineral reserve will be on or near indigenous land, with mining responsible for 25% of the global environmental conflict involving indigenous people. Osisko Development aims to become an intermediate gold producer, focusing on brownfield exploration with district scale potential. It currently owns and operates projects across Canada, the US, and Mexico. The Caribou Gold Project in British Columbia, Canada, is the central to Osisko growth, with 2.03 million ounces in estimated reserve and target 164,000 ounces in annual production. However, Osisko faced strong opposition from Hasu First Nation, who have raised serious concern about environmental risk, particularly in water sources and the habitat of the Parkavin caribou, a threatened species deeply significant to their culture and way of life. The caribou is not only a part of the local ecosystem, but it also holds the cultural, spiritual, and value for the Hasu people. Ignoring these concerns risks harming both ecosystem and community trust. Moreover, negotiations have stalled over dissatisfaction with the impact benefit agreement offer. As a result, the Hasu First Nation has chosen not to give their consent to the project. The Hasu Nation caution is understandable. With a small population, their culture and livelihood are deeply connected to the land. They still remember the 2014 Mount Polymine disaster, which released 25 billion liters of toxic waste into their waterway. And their hesitation to approve the project is driven by the need to protect their land and resources. The issue between Osisko and Hasu First Nation have been reported not only in the mining-specific sources, but also widely covered by the mainstream media. This could affect the company operation, investment opportunities, and public perception. Osisko approach to the Caribou projects raised concern with two key sustainable development goals. SDG 12 is about ensuring responsible consumption and production patterns. The environmental risks here, like water contamination and threat to the Parkavin caribou, challenge this principle responsible resource management. As SDG 17 focuses on strengthening the Partnership for Sustainable Development, the lack of indigenous consent and collaboration with the Hasu First Nation undermine trust, which is critical for long-term sustainability. And to ally true sustainability, Osisko needs to address the environmental and social issue.
To understand the legal environment Osisko faces, we need to start with broader legal context. In 1982, Section 35 of the Canadian Constitution formally recognized Indigenous rights, laying the foundation for the duty to consult. Internationally, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, introduced the principle of free, prior, and informed consent. Canada reinforced this through DRIPA, Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act in 2021, a commitment to align domestic laws with UNDRIP, though it's not legally binding yet. And in the province of British Columbia, modern treaties are being negotiated with nations that never signed historic ones, and this further expanded Indigenous jurisdiction and legal recognition. Hasu First Nation is currently at the final stage of their modern treaty negotiation. While Canada's legal framework acknowledges Indigenous rights, it doesn't always require full consent. Under Section 35 of the Constitution, governments and proponents are required to consult and accommodate when Indigenous rights may be impacted, and this is known as duty to consult. And that's why many projects rely on consult and mitigate approach. As long as the duty is met, companies can move forward legally, even if no final agreement is reached. Let's walk through where consultation fits into OSISCO's permitting timeline. So in BC, the duty to consult is triggered during the environmental assessment process, highlighted with the star here. OSISCO did engage with Hasu First Nation during this stage and fulfilling the minimum legal obligation. Even though Hasu did not give consent, the BC Environmental Assessment Office still issued the certificate in 2023, followed by the My Act permits in 2024. So legally, OSISCO can proceed with the project. However, legal precedents and a pending appeal could constrain your project advancement. The first case here in 2014 established that even without treaties, nations can still hold Aboriginal title, giving them strong land rights. And the second one, Blueberry River in 2021, recognized the cumulative impacts of development over time, not just individual projects. And most recently, the Gazilla appeal, set for early this year, may test whether UNDRIP is legally enforceable in Canadian courts. According to Hasu's chief, the nations actively preparing to pursue legal action. In their own words, we plan on filing a lawsuit. And they can strategically leverage these precedents to launch a high-impact lawsuit, raising stakes both legally and in the court of public opinion. Beyond legal precedents, there is also a regulatory risk that OSISCO's project could face federal oversight. Although OSISCO currently sits just under the federal threshold of 5,000 tons per day, its activities impact the Barkerville Woodland Caribou herd, a species listed under the Species at Risk Act. And under this act, the federal government can intervene in provincial matters when species at risk habitat is threatened. If advocacy groups or indigenous leaders raise the alarm, this could trigger a federal review, adding more scrutiny and project delays.
I'll now discuss the ethical dimension of this problem. So proceeding unethically undermines Indigenous reconciliation efforts and Indigenous self-determination. The three ethical issues at play are the right to exercise free, prior, informed consent, the rights of Indigenous people to practice, develop, and teach their cultural traditions and customs, and an unequal distribution of benefits. So let's begin with the first ethical issue involving the UNDRIP right to exercise free, prior, and informed consent. Hatsuth asked you to reach an agreement before taking further steps to complete the permitting process. They did not give their free, prior, and informed consent. And OSISCO, by proceeding without consent, you violated their right to free, prior, and informed consent. The second ethical issue is the right of Indigenous people to practice, develop, and teach their cultural traditions and customs. The ability to harvest, hunt, and practice ceremonies on the land is important to Hatsu's ability to practice, develop, and teach their culture. The survival of the Barkerville caribou herd is crucial to passing on their culture to future generations. However, the cumulative mining impacts cultural land use, heritage practice, and community health and well-being, and the risk is considered moderate to severe by the Environmental Assessment Office. Caribou gold will impact Hatsu's right to practice their culture. The third ethical issue is the unequal distribution of benefits. UNDRIP states that Indigenous people should have just and fair redress for resource extraction on their land. When we look at the financial benefits, OSISCO stands to gain $4.1 billion in revenue over the life of caribou gold. And while there's no defined amount of benefit to Hatsuth through employment without an agreement, Hatsuth is looking for long-term economic development and to better the long-term health of the ecosystem and the well-being of the community. And as long as caribou gold falls short of that, the benefits being distributed are not in a meaningful way to Hatsuth. There are real, measurable goods and harms to proceeding without consent. Well, OSISCO projects $4.1 billion in revenue that's only achievable if construction runs smoothly. If halted by legal action or protest, you risk being left with $55 million from early testing. And the risks include litigation, reputational damage, and major revenue loss. Hatsuth, on the other hand, could benefit from jobs and royalties, but without an agreement, employment is undefined and their rights remain unprotected. They fear serious long-term contaminated water, endangered caribou herd, and cultural loss that will affect future generations. And if this proceeds without their consent, you gain disproportionately while Hatsuth bears the deeper cost. The legal rights of IBESCC are in opposition to the ethical rights of Hatsuth. And while you have completed the required permitting process by our assessment, you're not meeting ethical mining practice. And by ignoring Hatsuth's concerns, IBESCC is neglecting their commitments to reconciliation and upholding the rights of Indigenous people.
IBESCC doesn't have a mission statement, but your core values emphasize relationship building, reciprocity, and responsible ESG practices. However, these principles are not being upheld in the Caribou Gold Project. This ethical misalignment jeopardizes your ambition of becoming an intermediate gold producer. Public awareness of Indigenous rights has grown steadily since 2015, but 2021 marked a tipping point. After the unmarked graves were discovered at former residential schools, conversations around reconciliation, land back, and UNDRIP accelerated, and Canadians began to expect more, not just from governments, but from corporations as well. That awareness translated into rising pressure for ethical, respectful, and meaningful engagement, and it's reshaping what it means to operate with legitimacy in Canada. Investor expectations have evolved. ESG factors now influence decisions for 94% of institutional investors, and that includes how well a company engages Indigenous communities. Legal risk is now financial risk. Delays, protests, or revoked permits translate to lost value. Since 2021, it's no longer just about returns. Investors are asking, does this company walk its talk? You must demonstrate alignment between your values and your actions. Otherwise, you're risking investor confidence. The ethical issues are ripe for public escalation. If a Hasu First Nation proceeds with legal action or strategic advocacy, the media could rapidly amplify the issue. And this narrative could ignite widespread activism, especially from Gen Z and reconciliation allies, put public pressure on governments to revoke or suspend your permits, and even policy debates or political backlash. The key point here is compliance alone is no longer enough. Public perception shapes trust, and that ultimately determines an organization's license to operate. Once that trust is lost, even legally permitted projects can become politically untenable. Industry leaders are gaining a competitive edge through ethical Indigenous partnerships, from equity partnerships to community procurement targets. And these companies are showing that ethical relationships lead to real business results. IBESCC, by comparison, is lagging on Indigenous engagement, and that's a serious competitive disadvantage. In 2024, you raised over $90 million in equity, issuing more than 50 million shares, and also faces a $25 million loan repayment by October this year. That means institutional and retail investors are watching closely, expecting rapid deployment of capital and visible growth. And this financial pressure helps explain why you're pushing the project forward so aggressively, but urgency doesn't justify cutting corners on ethical engagement, and rushing without consent could backfire both financially and reputationally. To better understand the financial implication, we conducted a scenario analysis informed by real-world cases. So these cases provide valuable lessons. Failing to respect Indigenous rights results in real, measurable financial and reputational damage. As shown here, the without consent scenario could lead to up to 100 million in legal costs, including settlements, 36 months project delays, similar to what Coastal GasLink faced during an ongoing protest. A 30% drop in share price, a rise in borrowing costs, and up to 200 million erosion in ESG and institutional investment. So that brings us to the problem statement. How can OSISCO strengthen collaboration with First Nations to ensure the Caribou Gold Mine project supports long-term ethical, environmental, and business sustainability?
So our strategy is to commit to Indigenous relationships. The two pillars of our strategy are to repair the relationship with Hatsuthe, so through a co-developed impact benefit agreement, and an ethical culture shift to honor the rights of Indigenous people and establish a long-lasting partnership. We'll start with pillar 1. OSISCO has a clear path forward. Repair the relationship with Hatsuthe. That means building trust and co-developing an impact benefit agreement, not just as a checkbox, but as a real partnership. When Hatsuthe is better off, you both win. Smooth operations, shared prosperity, and stronger environmental protection, because at the end of the day, meaningful mutual benefits are what lead to stronger partnerships. So Hatsuthe historically lived in a pit house, and the 4 pillars represent laws, land, territory, and language, and healing, which provide structure and stability to the people like a house. And Aboriginal title rights are seen as the roof covering the whole house. Their nation has a rich oral tradition and lots of storytelling. And to build that trusting relationship, it's important to prepare by learning about those 4 pillars foundational to their culture and to listen to the stories of community members with empathy. An Indigenous procurement strategy will support long-term development and entrepreneurship that Hatsuthe is seeking. We'll support Indigenous business development through advanced payments for contracts, building capacity through workshops, training, business support, and joint venture readiness. And unbundling contracts to smaller pieces that are more feasible for new, smaller companies to fulfill. OSISCO will be accountable by meeting with Hatsuthe each quarter to discuss their progress together in Indigenous procurement and including Indigenous procurement spending in their public sustainability reporting. We recommend a $21 million target for procurement through contracts with Hatsuthe. And partnering with the Hatsuthe Development Corps for implementation will increase the success of this strategy. An environmental protection plan co-developed with Hatsuthe will build trust and provide meaningful employment through skill development. Water management and caribou protection are top concerns for Hatsuthe. And given past contamination events, they've emphasized that need for community-led water monitoring and support to train local water technicians. So we recommend partnering with them in that community-led monitoring and sponsoring environmental operator certificates, and commit to long-term oversight, even post-closure. And for the caribou herd, we propose a co-managed recovery plan that blends scientific and Indigenous knowledge, including habitat restoration and funds for 2 local monitoring positions. And together, these efforts will not only protect the environment, but leave a legacy of local capacity and ecological stewardship.
Now let me guide you through the second pillar, ethical culture shift. This pillar focuses on 2 key actions: internally embed Indigenous respect into OSISCO culture, and externally build long-term trust-based partnership with the Indigenous communities. Ethical leadership is crucial for employees, investors, and Indigenous communities. This proactive approach will enhance your social license to operate and to move you from reactive compliance to proactive responsibility. We recommend updating OSISCO mission statement to reflect the clear commitment to the reconciliation and partnership. This should be demonstrated in daily action, from meeting to board discussion. Leadership must set the tone. We suggest creating an Indigenous Relation Committee and appointing a Director of Indigenous Relations to report directly to the CEO. This highlights that reconciliation is a strategic priority, and including Indigenous voices in governance will strengthen decision-making and respect. Next, we need to equip the team, and mandatory Indigenous cultural training must be in place with the immersive experiences like blanket exercise and land-based learning. An annual Indigenous cultural event like powwow and land walks will further strengthen the internal connection. And finally, making Indigenous representation a focus in your hiring strategy to attract value-driven talent. Externally, IBESCC should shift from consultation to co-creation, engaging early, sharing decision, and co-developing long-term agreement with environmental and co-management component. IBESCC should also create the economic opportunity by setting Indigenous procurement target, supporting Indigenous-led businesses, and exploring co-ownership or benefit sharing models. Invest in Indigenous youth and culture through scholarship and language preservation initiative will also help to ensure the long-term success. And this effort will position IBESCC as a true partner, not just a project proponent. And finally, track your progress through reconciliation scorecard. Beyond the number, capture and share the stories behind the data. Use internal dashboard, ESG reports, and social media to show reconciliation is visible and ongoing action. And moreover, encourage employees to nominate for reconciliation award and celebrate National Indigenous People Days with a company-wide participation.
To provide HASU with a meaningful agreement, the total investment would be around 43 million plus 2.2 million toward building internal cultural competency within your organization. And that total is just 1% of your projected 4.1 billion in revenue across the life of mine. Not to say it can be even lowered with government incentives. And this revenue projection highlights the financial stakes of your path forward. On the left, we've modeled your projected revenue over the next 5 years based on your 2024 financial disclosures, assuming an ethical partnership with HASU. And this path supports clean ramp-up, full production by 2029, and total revenue of over 850 million. Under this scenario, you can achieve your projected NPV of over 500 million and pace back your investment in under 6 years. Now compare that to the right. If you proceed without consent, legal action and protests could delay or stall operations entirely with zero revenue in the first 2 years. But if delays stretch beyond 2 years, the viability of the entire project and your projected 4.1 billion life of mine revenue could be jeopardized. Our recommendation isn't just about operational success. It's about the legacy you leave behind. By working hand in hand with Indigenous communities, you can demonstrate your active participation in Canada's national effort toward truth and reconciliation. This positions you as a values-aligned, future-ready company in responsible and sustainable mining that will illuminate a future where culture and wildlife thrive. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your presentations. And with that, I'll go ahead and launch us into some of our Q&A from the judges. So, great presentation overall. As a board member and, as a board member, just in light of some potential there's just potential for cultural misunderstandings and perhaps even some misinterpretation. How can we, as a board and as a company, essentially ensure that our interactions with the Sechul First Nation are respectful of their cultural traditions. You shed some light on it, but I'd love to hear some intricacies of it, because as we know, cultural traditions, values, and even their decision-making processes, I think there's a lot that we would need to absorb as an organization and as a whole. So how, essentially, how can we ensure that our interactions are respectful of cultural traditions, values, and decision-making processes?
Great question. And it's so vital to establishing that relationship. And you can't have an agreement without having a relationship as the foundation that holds it together. You can't implement it without that strong relationship. And so each First Nation is different. You can't treat them all the same. And so entering into a relationship with Hatsuth to specifically get to know their culture, learn a few words in their language, learn distinctions, like they don't live in a teepee historically. I mean, modern day, not anymore, but just to know differences about their culture and differences between other First Nations as well. We think that a great way to learn more is to actually consult the community. And there's actually a great opportunity through Hatsuth, where they have their heritage village that is a tourist destination to learn about their culture. And we think having people from your board and leadership staff to go and spend a weekend there and support a local business and learn from the people in the community.
I just wanted to add some more. So as a company, I think we're all eager to make a deal, but I think it's really important to respect the culture. And by going into the community, the first thing is not to talk about business, is to build that relationship. And that's very, very important for a lot of Indigenous communities. So I think it's really important to recognize that when you go into the land on there, it's to talk to them on a personal basis instead of bringing out, I'm here for the business, I'm here to present you something, a proposal, or let's talk about what you want for us to proceed the project. But it's more like on that personal level to build that relationship first. I think that's something that as a company or negotiators, you need to learn first, to build that, to respect that culture and then walk into that space.
Great, thank you. And Tanya, I saw you unmute, so please.
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned updating, or I guess creating a mission statement as part of this process. At what point would you recommend we do that? Would we do the weekend at Heritage Village first and create those relationships, or do we start with building our mission statement?
Yeah, actually, first of all, right now, we want to prepare, to gain trust from the Hatsuth, and Caribou projects right now is the first project we want to focus on. First, we want to focus more on the repair relationship with the Hatsuth first. And since when we already have established that partnership, we want to mention that Hatsuth is just Caribou project is just the first project for IBESCC, and we still have more and more projects in the future. And to prepare for that, we need to have that culture shift, and that will be after the when we already have the case study with Hatsuth First Nation.
Thank you.
Great. Other judges, Henry.
Yeah, so you mentioned as a significant component of the reason to, consult and obtain consent, that there'll be protests. How do you know there's going to be protests if we do this? Is there some kind of history of that, or?
Maybe I can. maybe I can first speak about that. I mentioned about that Coastal Gas Link. So that's a case that the whole operation was stalled for more than 3 years. So that's the case that we used, and that's every time it gets into that opposition, indigenous opposition, and if they file a lawsuit, and that happens a lot, like do we want to maybe just share that slide? There are companies and Trans Canada Pipeline as well that happened, and that's the $100 million lawsuit that we used to benchmark that, because that was a case that they really paid a lot into settlement.
And one more thing, we also can see that there are a lot of article to mention that Hasu really care about that, and this might go to the legal action without any action from OSISCO or BC.
So essentially, we have a duty to consult under what is Section 35 of the Canada's Constitution, and then after that, we've basically done all the legal requirements, because everything else is tentative, right? There's an appeal from Gizala from January 2025. But if that fails, all we have to do is consult, and then we get the green light.
So you get the green light to proceed. You can put your shovels into the ground. But if there's protesters in the local communities blocking your way, you're not going to be able to do business. Without that social license to operate within the local community, even if you have the legal authority to do so, it's not going to be a productive project. You really do need that cooperation from the local community. You're hiring people in that local community, and so working together and having their buy-in makes a really impactful difference.
Yeah, and one more important thing that's right now, a lot of media concern and younger generation is really care a lot about the indigenous issue. And we also can see that more and more mainstream media also listed those information. And this is not really good for the OSISCO reputation. It will impact your investor confidence, to invest the money in a unresponsible mining company.
In that regard, who issues the social license?
The public. Just working through this feedback and echoes a little bit. Yeah, the public and everybody really, because what we talk about back in 2021, during COVID, that was that one thing that really triggered everybody's awareness. Those unmarked graves. Because of that discovery, this issue really came up to the surface, and everybody's talking about it. So that public sentiment is really, really important. We can't ignore that. And those are your investors as well, because BlackRock is a asset management company. They withdrew a big chunk of, that's the 200 million I was talking about, that potentially can impact your institutional investors, because that's a real case that happened, and they withdrew that amount of investment from the company they invested in that had indigenous opposition, and they did not deal with that well. Just like that can potentially happen here if you go without consent. You just say, yeah, legally, okay, perfect, I got a permit, I have no issues working on your land. But those sentiments can really support them with a strong case to fight.
So I think that's really insightful relative to the legal rights and the aspect of the legal rights related to the social license, which is more of a nebulous concept. And in that regard, what role have we seen from this in this scenario with regard to organized third-party environmental or so-called NGO groups, either engaging directly with the First Nation or the public or the company?
I think either either one would be good. Actually, it depends on how committed you are. You can try that. You can, because Tian mentioned in her presentation, we can hire a consultant and internally, and with that indigenous background. And what we're aiming is the person with indigenous background, but also with that that experience in corporate world. So you can really bridge that to understand both sides. And the NGO is good as well. It depends on their mandate and what they're aiming for, right? Like if they deal with a lot of indigenous relationships, then we can leverage on that expertise. But I think eventually it will be good to build internally, because as a mining company, you deal with indigenous communities a lot because of the land, because of the minerals they process. So I think eventually that will be the goal, to have someone from internal that can have that expertise.
So would you say would you agree that it sounds like what you're ultimately saying is the buy-in of the community, it has benefits culturally, and it's, for lack of a better word, efficacious to the bottom line of our shareholders, and it's essentially a small price to pay for peace in a way. Would that capture what you're talking about?
It's a small price to pay for peace, but it goes beyond that. Like as a company, do you just want to settle for peace or be an industry leader? How are you going to recruit your staff unless they're excited about what they're doing and believe in the mission of the mining company? Like having those partnerships and really benefiting communities helps your whole organization run more smoothly and with more purpose.
Yeah, and also an interesting fact is that right now, the mining industry have a very difficult in retain the talent and recruit new talent. So this will be a very good case for if you want to have to be a better, you have a better position, and you can you can attract more talent. So you should change the way you work as well.
I have one more question. Looking ahead, if we're able to successfully implement what you've outlined here as with the Caribou project, how should we approach translating this to other projects if they are with other First Nations? If I'm saying that correctly.
I think that's a really great question. I think this is a learning experience too, and for the whole company, this is you want to showcase as well to your employees that you engage in indigenous communities, you cared about it, and I kind of want to touch on the previous question as well, because there is a gap between generations right now, the awareness of indigenous issues. Gen Z and millennials, they have like twice more awareness compared to baby boomers. And there's a blind spot because in the company right now, a lot, the CEO you have, it's in that generation. So perhaps the awareness that a little bit as well. And through this project, you can show your employees that you are actively educating yourself as a CEO, and you're trying to bridge, close that gap, and then really listen to, oh, okay, right now this is the public sentiment, and this is what people care about, and this is the whole country cares about truth and reconciliation. We even have that national date because of the discovery in 2021. So now we have that September 30th as our National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So this project, if it goes well, it can really show your employees and to the public that you proactively engaged, you try to solve the problem. And even moving forward, we're not just going to stop here. Moving forward, this model is going to be applied to all the rest of First Nations you're going to engage in the future. And that really sets the precedence.
Thank you.
So from the board of directors standpoint, what is the opportunity for us as a company moving forward? If we get this right on this project, where does that position us for other projects in the future?
So looking to the future, as a board, your goal is to become an intermediate gold producer. You're wanting to expand your reputation, and this is the perfect opportunity for that, because now your reputation precedes you, that you leave communities better off than when you came, that you added that extra value when you come to mine. So as there's that opportunity as you grow. So those really go hand in hand.
Got a fundamental question. So you mentioned ESG. So we're obviously a public company traded on an exchange, but I don't think the system isn't maximized stakeholder value right now. It's essentially what you're saying when you say ESG. We're still at the maximized shareholder value. Is that your understanding of the capital markets right now?
Raise or clarify that question?
Yeah, so companies, they raise capital to maximize shareholder value, meaning they don't care, what they do the local area, as long as the share price is high as it can be. Now, stakeholder value is what you're talking about. You should take into account not just the shareholders, but also the surrounding community, and other entities. And, I actually agree that we should get buy-in by local communities, because they'll make your life hell if you don't. Like you said, either the protest will be real or imagined, but it'll happen more than likely. But the bottom line right now in American capitalism, and I assume now, are we a Canadian company or an American company?
This is a Canadian company based out of Montreal.
Okay, so they're probably on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Same deal. But so I guess the upshot is, I think we'll get thrown out of our jobs if we don't consider shareholder value. But I agree that, odds are the project is going to be severely hampered if we don't get local buy-in, So that's all.
Understanding the question you were asking about, is this going to be good for the bottom line still? We care about if we're providing that extra value, but does that make us more profitable on the stock exchange, because we still have that duty to shareholders to maximize profit? And I think through Shihan's financial analysis, she was showing that it does align with maximizing that profit to shareholders by moving forward in a more ethical manner and engaging local communities in a good way.
To just add a little bit to that, because right now, IBESCC doesn't really have a strong cash flow. This is the Caribou Gold Mine is their flagship asset. They have operations in the US and also in Mexico, but they're not really generating revenue. It's a very small amount. So they're really, you were betting on this project, really. You raised you issued that 50 million common shares. So how do you return that? So that's your bottom line as well. If this one doesn't go well, that NPV you projected to attract those investors is not going to happen. They're not going to be happy. So you really need to work on that relationship to resolve that problem, get the consent, so you have a smoother permitting process and more efficient operational operational efficiency. Without that, you really can't respond to the investors' expectation, because this is really, really the project that you're betting on.
Okay, guys, thank you for that. And thank you to the judges for their questions. Very insightful. So now we're going to switch over. We're going to take off our judging hats and we're going to put on our normal people hat to provide you with some feedback. I'd love to open it up to our judges for their thoughts on the presentation, and anything and everything. It's all open now. So we'll give us about 5 to 10 minutes to have this discussion. So opening it up to any of our judges for their feedback.
I just say from Alaska, where I lived this exact dynamic day to day for the last 35 years, you guys have really, I thought you did an excellent job. You nailed it in terms of these are the actual conversations that go on in boardrooms around projects like this all the time. We have an example in Alaska of a project that has followed your path 40 years ago with the Red Dog Mine that is 50% owned by the Northwest Alaska Native Association, the NANA Corporation. And so they have a 50% say in everything, and a Canadian mining company. And then we've seen several projects that have not succeeded because they didn't do exactly what you guys have recommended to us as the board of directors today. So yeah, I thought you just nailed it. That was awesome.
Yeah, I would echo what David said, and I thought you had some very insightful answers. I also thought your presentation skills were really good. And in terms of just the slide layout, I found it very helpful the way the summary boxes on the bottom had that text highlighted of just a couple words. It was very easy to follow along. And yeah, I thought you did a great job.
Yeah, I certainly think you covered you anticipated all the arguments. He's like, hey, you want to buy in, but if you buy in, you're going to make $455 million if you buy in. So you anticipated, all the arguments. I guess I'd probably go in and be like, okay, who do I bribe? Maybe I can save some money. No, but no. Yeah, I agree with Tanya. As far as the highlighting and all that, so that was good. It helped us follow along. So yeah, overall, like I said, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to anticipate every argument, and so good job.
One thing I just saw my note to myself to bring up too was I thought you gave an answer where you cited the example of BlackRock mine in terms of the financials and why this made sense. And I thought the response in the Q&A was very strong, and maybe because I think you have another presentation, and so if you're able to integrate that into that slide where you have BlackRock named, and highlight that a little bit more.
Oh yeah, one thing, don't switch slides so fast. Make sure you leave it on there long enough for them to spot those bold highlights, but that's it. Yeah, keep going forward. Yeah, that's about it.
And that's really hard in the world of Hollywood Squares presentations, where you're not sitting around a conference table and you can't necessarily see your board of directors going, looking at their watches saying, come on, or we're really interested in that. So if people who can master this online Zoom or Teams format in today's world, it is a life success skill in business, and it's not easy. So I thought also you guys did a great job with the thing that I catch CEOs all the time, is they get started, they have a great presentation, and then the link isn't working, or there's feedback or whatnot, and people get tripped up, and you guys rolled right over that. So I don't know. Maybe you put that in there intentionally to see how the team would do.
No, it literally was so organic.
And what he said too, as far as this online world, when you're talking, make sure you look at the camera. It's kind of unnatural, but when you look at the camera, we think you're looking at us. So just a FYI.
And great managing the whole microphone situation, given you're all in the same room. And I think that actually helps in these kinds of situations. in a sense, since you're all kind of feeding off of each other and your energies in person and with us. And it really resonated during your presentations and how you presented virtually. And I think that's actually quite helpful. And I completely agree with Tanya in terms of your slides. I mean, well done. And I especially liked how you also mentioned the non-financial impacts. I thought those were really, really important to highlight, especially to this particular board, at least for me, because that was going to be one of my questions, but I'm like, we got it. So that was great. So well done, everyone. And I see, Jeff, you're here. Hello.
Yeah, sorry to be stepping in at the last minute. And I just want a couple of observations because you've gotten feedback about slides. As you know, tomorrow you will have 2 other presentations. I just want to talk a little bit about format. So the 10-minute presentation is that you're brought back in by the board, no slides, no Q&A, but they say, talk to us about the ethics piece. And I think part of what you're hearing from the judge feedback is that the slides help you tell a story and they help you frame how you want to present the issue. And so your preparation tonight for tomorrow will be, how do you take their input and then turn that into the narrative that you tell tomorrow without slides. And that's the 10-minute presentation. And then the 90-second, and that's focused on ethics. And there will be no Q&A, but there will be judge feedback. And then the 90-second presentation is very different. It's an elevator pitch. So the convention is, you run into an executive, they say you're working on this project. Why is that important and what does it have to do with sustainability? And there the focus isn't ethics, it's on sustainability and articulating that. And no Q&A for that either, but there will be judge feedback, okay? So, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I think, Tanya, I think you're closing us out. I appreciate everyone. Your presentation was great. Best wishes and good luck in your next presentations. And thank you to our wonderful judges as well.